Here we want to solve x squared minus 5x equals 24. And there's a useful technique for this. Scan the equation. If you see both x squared and x, move everything to one side of the equal and get 0 on the other. Okay, so a lot of times people get to this point, x squared minus 5x equals 24, and they don't know what to do because it's not in this form that they're used to seeing. So we follow this little tip here, scan the equation. I see an x squared and an x. So I know to get everything on one side of the equal and a 0 on the other. So let's subtract a 24 from both sides. X squared minus 5x minus 24 equals 0. Now we have an equation that's more familiar, right? We want to factor this down. Negative 5 is our b term, negative 24 is our c term. We want to find factors of c that add to b. So we want to find two numbers that multiply to negative 24 but add to negative 5. So let's see, we have 24 here. Okay, 1 and 24. There's no way to add or subtract those to get 5. 2 and 12, that's not going to do the trick either. 3 and 8 though will do it because 8 minus 3 is 5 and 5 is what we're looking for. So now let's just mess with the negatives a little bit to get this to the right form. We want this to be negative 5, so I'm going to leave the 3 alone and multiply by negative 8. Okay, because that gives us negative 24, which is what we want. And then when we add those together, 3 plus negative 8 is indeed negative 5, which is what we want for our b term. So that's going to do it for our factoring there. X and x plus 3 minus 8. Okay, and then we use a zero factor property to set each one of these terms equal to 0 and solve. That gives us x equals negative 3, x equals 8. You could also write this as x equals negative 3 and 8. Or put these into a solution set with the curly brackets, negative 3 and 8. Okay, what you don't want to do here, and this is a unfortunately common mistake, people see this problem and they say, okay, I better factor out. So what I'm doing right now is wrong. Wrong. Okay. They see it and they say, okay, let me factor out an x. X and x minus 5 equals 24. And then they set x equal to 24 and x minus 5 equal to 24. Okay, what's happened here is we've applied the zero factor property to 24. But it's literally in the name. It's the zero factor property. This only works for 0. So we cannot do it for something like 24. It does not hold for 24. It only holds for 0 on the right-hand side. So don't fall down this trap. It will lead you to bad places. Instead, follow this little tip here and get the correct answer. Let's try another one. There are a couple different ways to solve this, but since we're factoring, and we want to solve it by factoring in this context, let's go ahead and use factoring. So to do that, I'm going to subtract the 9 from both sides. That gives us x squared minus 9 equals 0. And now this is the difference of squares, so we can factor it as follows. X plus 3, x minus 3 equals 0. Then we use the zero factor property to set both of these equal to 0. All right, x minus 3 equals 0. And then solve. X equals negative 3. Here we have x equals 3. Which oftentimes is written as x equals plus or minus 3. Okay, yes, there are other ways to solve it, but be careful. If you just say, for instance, take the square root of both sides, you get x equals 3. Well, you've lost one of your answers. You only have half the answers there. So since we're factoring in this section, I'm going to stick with the factoring and just leave it as that. Let's try another one. Here we have x plus 3, x plus 8 equals x. And this is the kind of thing that oftentimes shows up on exams because it requires us to do so many different things. It's a really good exam question. Let's take a look at that tip again. Scan the equation. If you see both an x squared and x, move everything to one side of the equals to get 0 on the other. Well, I don't quite see an x squared and an x, but notice that if we were to FOIL these together, then we would get an x squared and we'd also have x's. And this holds anytime you have both an x squared and an x. You want to move everything to one side of the equation, get a 0 on the other side of the equal sign. So what you need to do here is expand this first by FOILing. Okay, so let's FOIL this together. X squared first, outside plus 8x, inside plus 3x, last plus 24 equals x. Combine like terms to get x squared plus 11x plus 24 equals x. And now we scan the equation and note that we have both an x squared and an x, right? Actually, we have two x's. So we'll move everything to one side of the equal sign to get a 0 on the other. No problem, let's subtract x from both sides. X squared plus 10x plus 24 equals 0. Factor it down. We need factors of 24 that add to 10. What do you think? Can you think of them quickly? What are two numbers that when we multiply them together, we get 24, but when we add them, we get 10? I'm getting 6 and 4. X plus 6, x plus 4 does the trick, equals 0. Now we bring in that 0 factor property to set each of these equal to 0 and solve, getting x equals -6, x equals -4. Okay, great test question right there. I recommend going back and working this one to make sure you're ready if you see this on an exam.